Alright, for part 2 of this, we're going to jump into materials and textures. So, if you didn't see part 1, it's linked below in the comments. You can get the full description of what's going on in this series of multiple videos by checking out part 1. I don't want to eat a whole lot of time reviewing all that, but for this section we're going to be covering materials and textures, textures in general, materials and blueprints. We're also going to take a look at material functions because they're different than an actual material, and their blueprint setup is pretty much the same, a few extra different modes. And then we're going to look at landscape material blending, taking a whole bunch of materials, applying it into a single material blueprint so we can do layer blending just like in Photoshop, to artistically design out our landscape. We'll cover them with dirt, grass, rock, etc. That's what's been here. Again, we are in Unreal Engine 4.18.3. So let's kind of just jump into that. I really don't want to bake this out, but just the cook times on this are pretty, they won't be too bad on this. I don't have anything on here, but what I do want to do is I want to break this up a little bit. Create a folder real quick. Atmosphere. Create another folder for landscape. And I'm going to take all of my little deals here. Let's see, light source here. Pull those up in atmosphere so I can seclude them. Landscape elements here. Boom. They're secluded. And I'll just leave Mr. Cube House. I'll go ahead and rename him Fake House. And there's our little fake house there. Let me pan out of this real quick because I need to add one more little thing to help out our well, I don't have to go in there. I just type it here. Like mass importance volume. Just drag that in, place it here, kind of like a stippler for everything being dead on center. It just makes measurements better. So let me hide the landscape. See how easy that is now because I put it in a folder. I don't have to hide two things. Get him centered up, right on dead center, snapping on that grid. Perfect. Could take this the long route and just drag it to make it big, but get the ballpark on this. I think it's 250 by 250. Yeah, it's close. Let me just jump at 255. 255, and I think I want to go with 50 here, and go left, and I'll zoom in to get the real height on that. Drag this off a little bit. It's pretty close. Let me bring it down. I gotta zoom in. See that dip there? I gotta make sure that this little bounding box here, this volume for my light mass, it just tells the engine what is actually important when it comes to the lighting. So it's not like throwing photons all across this whole grid area. Kind of speeds up the process. And max height hits here. So let me cheat. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Just going that way. So we're in editing mode. So it allows me to do these little cheap things here. Quick and easy. Bring that down a little bit more. And then where did our big boys go? Where did these guys go? Atmosphere fog. Light source, skylight. Where are you guys at? Oh yeah, you're way up there. So I got them out of the way earlier. I'm gonna bring them back down. I just want to make sure that they're like inside there. I just like keeping track of things that way, and they're pretty much centered in the top view. Get back to here. So see, there they are. Hey, they're inside. I can find them easy when I need to. Very good. Go ahead and just build this out and let that build. And the lighting is just going to take forever. Well, it generally takes forever. The more I add to this, the more it's going to take. Let's see what Swarm has to say. So one process of the lighting. So this is a Swarm agent. It just basically all this does is it delegates to the systems, the PCs in the network that are hooked up with Swarm. Just delegates some of the workload to them. If there was another PC, it would be listed here, and it would show, you know, how many threads, cores that it's using to process that out. It just speeds up lighting. I don't want that running. But I mean, with this right here, we're emitting direct photons, emitting indirect photons. We're calculating radiance photons, and you know that just continues on and on and on. And then we get over here, we get our skylight radiance, and this is the big part, the blue section, the processing, the mappings. It just takes forever to do that. Sometimes the bigger the map, the more processing it takes. Typically in like studios like Bluehole, for example, or Epic Games, when they're doing like Unreal Tournament builds and whatnot, you'll have build farms. That'll be multiple PCs, 20, 30 PCs that lighting gets delegated to. Because some of these light builds can take 24, 30 hours to run. That's how massive they get. It's the bigger the world that you're dealing with, especially when you're dealing with world composition, multiple maps and streaming. So like, for example, if I had, you know, 32 of these base surfaces, you know, 32 of these little maps right here, blended all together, tiled together to make one giant open world. Each is a different level, and they get all piled together, and you know, it just takes a long time to do light builds. You would do a light build, then light build, then light build, and light build as you develop them out. And every time you add something to a level, like if I added another one, it copied this and placed it over here, I'd have to do another light build because of the shadow. And you know, it's going to cast different shadowing because no shadowing there. I'm adding a shadow, so I have to. I got some real-time lighting effects on here, but to get the full on, hey, what's going on, we have to do a light build. So light build's done. That went pretty quick. So basically what I want to get into right now is the textures. And so we have textures. Yes, we still use textures, but they're not used in the same way that you would do old school. In old school, actually, I'm not going to do that to a cube. Let me just do it to basic geometry. So I just brought in like a little basic square here, and it, by default, it gets the material that's applied here, which is the none material, none, which is default. And the material ground dirt, and it just created a material for this, because we don't apply textures directly to. See, it's right there. That's just disgusting. So I need to undo that. Details. I don't want that. I want to go back to the default. I don't want that thing on there because I don't want to. That's wrong. Delete that out of there. Old school. I'm talking like old school, like Unreal Engine 2 and Doom and Quake Engine and stuff like that. The old school stuff. We would click on a surface and apply the texture, and then then we would come to this little geometry thing here, and because it's already selected, and we can change the panning on it, rotate it, flip it, the scale of the texture and everything, and we use panning to align it. So like if the edge of the texture had like a wood kind of effect to it, say they had say for like molding, you had a corner of the texture, a side of it texture had a molding pattern on it, like a wood molding, and then the rest of it was just like a flat painted wall kind of effect. You used a pan to line that up. We don't do that anymore. We actually create materials. So you can get in a material. Let's see, plains, cliffs. And I have basically a whole just bunch of regular materials here for landscaping stuff for this demo. What's a good one? Let's just throw some rock on there. Boom. That's got the rock material. And I'm gonna shift click off that. So I mean, it's just a rock material that's applied to it. Looks pretty decent. It's shadowed and whatnot. I'd have to recook the lighting to get a better view of that. That's material on that side, that face of that box. And I can apply a different one because this is BSP geometry, so I can apply rock there. So it's a little bit different, but I don't like the tiling on that. I can say 4 and 4, apply it, and boom, the tiling changes. And you kind of do this with your static meshes and everything and whatnot, because like if I click this, and it's got element 0, it only has, when this was created, it only had one, texture or material slot. You add those when you create the actual static mesh. If I turn this into a static mesh right now, it's just going to have 1, 2, because it's got 2 slots. I can cover each one of these faces with different material. And let me just throw grass on this one. I don't want to throw a landscape one on there because that's huge. I'll throw mud on that side. So this is where all that tiling comes into play. Let me just, what was that, 4 and 4, apply that, and it's a little bit better. You can actually see it. Keep my camera down to 4 so I'm not like zipping around crazy, but then you see it's grass in there. Actually, let's do mud, and the scaling automatically sticks to what it was, whatever I scaled that surface to, because all these properties are bound to that surface. I would have to reset it and whatnot to get it off, but I mean, here's a different material. It's pretty blended and whatnot, but I can create a static mesh on that by just where's my little box brush? Right there. I can go right there, create static mesh. I can just boom. I can merge polys, not much, and it's a square there. Solidity, change that. Order in which I added it to the world, to first or to last. Align the brush vertices, create that. I can do all kinds of different little settings with this. Anyway, that's just a basic overview of materials, or textures and everything. So if I apply a texture directly to a surface on a brush, that was a brush, it was basic geometry BSP, or if I to a static mesh, and then if it's a texture by itself, it creates a little basic simple material, which is just going to take that texture and slot it into a base color attribute, material attribute, and that's just real simple stuff. So, but when you do it to a material, you drag a material onto a mesh that only has, this mesh only has one slot, boom, the whole thing gets applied, and whatever the scaling was set for that surface, that's what gets applied when you, well, not because the surfaces dictate whatever scaling and panning and whatnot was set on that geometry when it was converted to a mesh and imported. It's there. I have to export this out and remap all that stuff in something like Blender or 3D Studio Max, Maya, whatever. But yeah, see, it's blown up. It's ugly big. But I don't want that cube. I want to go back to its default, which was that generic thing. Which, let me just Control Z. I like my little white one. Yeah, there we go. Control Z. But let's like actually look at a material. Alright, it's in its own little thing. Pull this over a little bit. I can pan out on this. It's complicated. Constants. We have camera depth fades and texture coordinates running into math functions, multiply, add, multiply, lerp, and each one of these little blue ones, texture sample, that's actually pulling a texture in. So that's macro variation 2, macro variation 2, macro variation 2, and so forth. We get down here, we're using the albedo. That's the actual ground texture. I can click on this and load that texture. That's the actual diffuse, the actual colored texture, and that's getting multiplied out, and then we do like a fuzzy edge effect on here with Fresnels. And then over here we have a normal, or this is my mask here. And we just got all these different textures loaded in, and here's my normals, and the all run back over and set up into the attributes. So what we have here is, this is where all our base diffuse, like the colored textures, the albedo and whatnot, and it just pumps back down and it jumps right into the base color. And then we give it a metallic constant right here, 0, 1, 2, whatever number you want to pump in here, it affects, but metallic only goes up to, I mean, it's just like 0 to 1, if I remember correctly. There's a whole lot of stuff you got to remember with all this, because there's actually a whole lot of freaking functions that you can do in here. Layer blends, all the different layer blends that you can do: bake normal, simple adds, break normals, decals, modulation, multiplies, flattens. I mean, there's just so many different things. And then you got your maths going into arrays and so just everything you can think of in math. Math functions, color stuff, desaturation, blends. I got color burn, color dodge. There's your Photoshop based stuff. Difference, exclusion, hard light for your overlay, your blend overlay effects. Photoshop, pretty much right here. Pin light, screen, soft light, scratch grime. That's alert. So you have all these little different things, and say like if I wanted to add one, add color dodge, boom, there it is. I would pull in the layer that I want to blend, which would be like this. I would just run a connection there, and then a base value. It could be a constant vector, whatever, some of multiply, whatever, and pump that in, and that would change the effect there. And I don't want to change the effect because I don't want to recompile this this whole daggone shader thing that each time. No, I don't want to change that. But that's a base material. So that's how we create these little materials, and we can do a lot more with them than just basic little textures, 2D texture. So what else do we want to get into? So it's basic material overview. Now we're going to get into landscapes. Now I have a couple demo here's, and here's one that I was playing around with. This totally different setup, but this one is the one that I'm going to be using for well, this whole video series here. So they're grayed out right now with that default because they're just not compiled for this video, because every time you reboot, some of this stuff has to recompile. But we wanted to look at material functions because they're a little bit different than the material. It's the material itself. Let me just get dark dirt. It's a material, but we use function nodes. It's like I can do landscape chords. That basically allows me to do a map scaling in the material, pass that through an input, the vector 2, and then I pass it to my texture, pass it to my normal, because I really did simple stuff with our simple amount of textures. The shaders are limited. We're running shader model 5, I believe, in where was that? There's so many. There's the scalability, material qualities high, preview run the shader model 5. Yeah, so we're running shader model 5 in this DirectX 11. I'm pretty sure PUBG and most FPS are running shader model 5. But shader model 5 limits you. It has limits. It has total. Let me just show you what I'm gonna have to. I'll just move this a little bit and save it. And no, it's not gonna do it. So let me be a pumpkin head here, and I'll just disconnect that, save it, because the output's different. It's not rendering an output for that. It should save. I want my stats, man. I'm not really changing anything. And this right here is just like a little color thing. It's not even hooked up, so I don't even really need it. So technically, boom, get rid of you. These two, get rid of you. Save some stuff there. I'm not gonna do it. I'll have to really change something, but to show stats on that, and I might get one out of the landscape build itself. Anyway, you're limited to the number of texture samples that you import in for the complexity of your actual material overall. It comes out to I believe the max for 5 is 32 textures, and the max, I believe it might be set up right now in Unreal Engine, is 16. I haven't pushed anything over that. I just don't want to deal with the issues that you run into with it. The other consideration is the number of instructions. So you can have, like right here, this is this texture, but it's the same texture, so it doesn't count as 2. Same normal, so it doesn't count as 2. So total in here in this material only have 2 textures that I'm pulling. Keeping it simple because for landscape, I could get all willy-nilly and go crazy, and that would just beef up the instructions. The instruction count in here is pretty small. You can just look at the nodes, multiply. I have a clamp, I have a power, I have a lerp, set attributes. I have this input over here, this input. Get down here, I have more. This is my distance blending. So when that tiling aspect that I showed on the geometry for that basic brush, when in scale 1, it's like really small tile, and you don't want really small tiles in your face when you're standing on a landscape, because what happens is you see that tiling. You actually literally see that tiling going across. I might show that to you in a second, but I mean, with the distance blending, it kind of adjusts that out a little bit so that you're not seeing it. It helps with the tiling, so you're not seeing that tiling pattern. And these nodes over here allow me to say, okay, the map scale, the max I want for my distance is 32. So don't pass 32 on the scaling. So that makes it scales out that texture really big, out to about 32 sample. and this one I think is 8. No, that's actually 1. No, I did that in my landscape material itself. But I hard set the minimum in my landscape material for a couple layers to 8, and I'll show you that in a second. Anyway, we jump into the height map over here, and the point of a function, a material function, right here, material function, is it takes all that stuff and it dumps it out into an output, and the output name is dirt dark. So when I actually open my landscape, say there's some shaders compiling. Here's my dirt dark. In there I have set up close UVs, I have distant UVs, and I have a distance blend. So that's where, remember that distance blending deal, that's there, and it outputs and it sits right here in the distance blend for these 3. So I have rock, I have dirt dark, I have dirt light. Dirt light is just a mirror of dirt dark. It's just a mirror, but I added a multiply with a constant to brighten it. So it's darker, that's brighter, and that's just a performance thing to you know, for my material, total material here, is because you got to count all the textures here, all the instructions here, materials, instructions, materials, instructions, materials, instructions, or textures, basic textures and instructions, textures and instructions, and that compiles down into, for this material, to the instruction count. So we have 210 for the base pass, we have 227 for the surface light map volumetric, we have 283 vertex shader, we have 34. It's only counting 4 textures here, and then we have our interpolators. So right here, there's 600, 700 and change instructions that we're dealing with here, and that goes to the total instructions. We got to add these in with it as well for total instructions for this whole daggone thing. That limits the layers. Technically I can add as many layers as I want to. I'm unlimited there, but I'm limited to total texture count of 32 technically, according to Epic. But what we want to look at it is 16. I'm not pushing past 16, and definitely I haven't pushed past that with this. So I have 2 in I think 2 in this one, 2 in this one, 2 in this one. These 2 are the same, so it just counts as 4. The grass I think is 4 a pop, but these are 2 mirrored grasses with no difference in them whatsoever. It's just so I can apply. See, this one has fill grass, no mesh. That's the one that we're going to apply for just regular grass with no, the grass material texture out on the surface. And this one is bound to the sampler, which is my landscape grass output. So whenever I paint with this texture, it triggers this, and grass, whatever's in this setup, will be the grass. And I'll get to that later on in the series of videos, but we need to just jump in here because we're running on 30 minutes on this video alone. So hopefully that was enough of an overview. Might have been a little bit too much, but anyway, light mass volume goes up in atmosphere. Click off of that. I want to get into landscape. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drag my landscape over, landscape material slot, drop it. That's going to compile shaders, and because I haven't painted yet, let me get over here. I'm going to say it went black. It's compiling shaders. While it's doing that, set up layers. Now remember all those names up here for those outputs. So I have rock, dirt dark, dirt light, grass no mesh, grass mesh. These are my layers in my blend, shooting off to material attributes for this. So when I go back to my map and I add that material in, here are my layers again, and I have to assign them. See, there's no layer info, so I have to, create a layer info for that. And we're going to do non-weight blended, untitled one shared aspect. Yeah, sure. Let's just do that. I have to create. Yep, dirt dark, non-weight blended, dirt dark. That was done. Non-weight blended. Okay. Non-weight blended. Okay. You see how it's just created all those little pain in the butts. And you can still see this grid because there's a light build, and because the rock layer is the top layer, it just auto applied that. But I mean, we can get in here and we can start seeing that. See right there, you can see it. See, when I'm up here, it's tiled out pretty big, but as I get closer to it, I want more detail. I want more detail in it, so when I'm up close and personal with it, it looks good. Actually, let me, where's my materials? Landscape. And yeah, I can just do it in here. Alright. So this is my rock layer. My close, I got it set to an 8. So I'm just going to pop it to a 2. I'm going to save it. It's going to compile shaders. It's saving the asset across the board here. Boom. So here comes those shaders. They take a while to do, but until those shaders are done, we gotta wait. That's really why I didn't want to get into this, but let me just pop out of that real quick so I can get my crosshair back. But yeah, I mean, you can actually see it. See that tile? That's just ugly. So as I fade out, I pull away, I'm stuck at that max set 32 that we set in the default material function. But as I pull back in, the close UVs is governed strictly by that landscape coordinates node in the actual landscape function that I just changed to 2. So yeah, hopefully you see my point about tile. That's ugly. That's god awful ugly. And then when you're like this close to it, yeah, you get some detail out of that thing, but I mean, you see that tiling is, it's just gross. I don't like it. Let me go back to 8. What is that one? That one's 8. That one's 8. Save it. Landscape chord nodes. Giving ourselves some control. So I could actually take and created material function instances, and then had a little input and whatnot over here for map scaling. Instead of just clicking in the node itself, I would, just by clicking on the output over here, I would have, blend options listed off because I set them up as inputs. But I didn't want to go through all that. It adds to instructions and yada yada yada. So we're saved here. It compiled pretty fast, so now we're back to, okay, beautiful 32. I can extend that out to like 256 or whatever for the far away, but that's just ugly. Get back in here and we have these nice little setup. The little lines for the components are still in because I have to do another light build because I applied a texture or material to the surface. But anyway, we're going to do some blending here. And so let's see, I don't want rock to be my default. I want to have, and that's just a whole lot of erasing. I think I want to go with the no mesh here and just fill the layer. It's going to compile again because I'm applying a different material to the surface. And every time I touch this daggone surface with a different color or layer, boom, here we go with our grass. So it's just going to compile every time I add. So like if I add a little like dirt, boom, it's got to compile. Like dirt, like dirt, like dirt, it's got to compile. I do that same thing with the dirt, the dark dirt. It's going to compile. Same thing with the the mesh version. But anyway, we can get down here, we get real close, we filled the layer. Actually, let me clear layer of the rock and just do this right. So basically, it autofills when you pop your material in. It's going to autofill with the first layer that's in your setup. I should, I could have flipped it and made it, all these layers, top bottom kind of thing. I just worked differently, but it had that first layer auto-filled in, and then when I filled layer here, when I hit this for that one, it just pasted it over the top of it, applied it just like in Photoshop, a different layer over the top of it, and you can still see it, that translucence through there. But now it's not there, you can't see the rock surface on there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to paint some dirt. Let me get my tool strength out and just slam it to make it, stick really hard. So I'm going to paint the dirt on, and just like before, the lower layer is still there, so it's kind of blending up through. Now I'm going to do some, let me just do it like this. Take for blending, you want to have a low tool strength so it's not eating away at the layers so much. Once it just slam strips it. The lower you get, especially when you get 0.0 and then start pulling into a range, you get a better blend effect. Let me get down here and actually show you how this works. So what we're going to do here is we're going to hold shift and we're going to remove this mesh area from this no mesh grass underneath. We're going to remove it, and that dirt's going to pop. See how that dirt's actually pulling through now? I can pull this up a little bit bigger here, and we're actually just removing the grass from from below the dirt, so it's not there anymore. And that fall off, this is where that fall off comes into play. So we're going from grass, and grass does grow up over dirt a little bit. We're trying to emulate that effect into pure dirt. And let's get the detail in there. Look, there's some footprints in there. Nice little fade in. Boom, grass, bing, yeah, there. Now, let me just ballpark a bigger area here. Get that in there. You can see a little white, that white blurry on there. But I'm not gonna go crazy on this, go all artistic on it. It's just an example showing you how it's done. Now I'm gonna take the dark dirt and I'm gonna apply it. Do those freaking shader instructions. We're gonna compile that. This is the sucky part. This is massively sucky. So one thing that you can do when you first start getting in here, so your flow is not interrupted, you can take each one of these and do a very low, I mean, you can actually type in a number 0.008. You can set that, and then take your brush size to 10. So that's a 10 centimeter brush, and you can go through each one of these components before you actually start doing it, and say, okay, I need dirt dark there, dirt dark there, dirt, and just get these out of the way. I mean, it takes a few minutes to do it, but now dirt dark has been applied to every one of those stinking components, and you won't run into compiling when you're in your artistic flow of things and running through. So anyway, we've got that there. I want to adjust that back out to, let me say 1, get it there, and then just drag it back. So 0.1, that's pretty good. Get it up off of 10 centimeters. Get a good area here. Whoa, so that zoom. Just pop in real. I hate camera speed adjustments. So what we want to do here is I'm going to add that dark dirt, just fill in this would be the better soil, the more farmable soil, so to speak. It's the same exact texture material as the light dirt, so when I apply it, it's got the same exact scaling. I mean, it literally mirrors. So for example, where this rock is on the light dirt, it's the same position on the dark dirt, so you get a better blend and no weird deformation from, you know, different actual textures trying to blend each other for this type of thing. Just a technique, personal, you know, I dig it. It's the way I do things. But we're gonna pop this brown out to, we want to get an area so we can see the blend. And now we're gonna take the light dirt and we're gonna pull it away from the middle, and you see how much darker it gets. So now we're at the pure dark dirt there, and we can start adjusting that edge. See, I ran out of spot right there where it doesn't have anything underneath it. So what I need to do is brush size. I'm going to add that dirt layer back in. That light dirt. See, I'm pulling it back in, and I'm going to get that. This is the pain part of doing blending sometimes. So I just fill that edge up, and I got the tool strength really low. And we were getting it there. You want to get rid of those sharp edges and just kind of pull it out a little bit more. But you know, that's the artistic stuff here. So we got a pretty good blend here. See what that looks like and play it, and just drop down in here. Now the lighting, I should rebuild the lighting and whatnot. We're gonna get this exposure thing kicking in. Let me see, this lit and exposure. We should be fixed at log 0. Automatic is just, see how it just starts, that brightening thing. It just sucks for when you're doing this. You have to have some lighting fix. So actually, that's in cinematic. Let's go to the game view, and we get a little bit better with the game view. But I mean, it's just going to do that brightening thing, and it sucks. And you'll see this in the other videos. But the blend is pretty good. I mean, grass to light, dirt to dark. Can't see it really well because of the stupid exposure issue. But when you get the lighting built properly and whatnot, you'll see it. But that's basically that. And I can actually go back in here and add the grass back over the top of this if I want to. Let me increase that brush a little bit. I can add the grass back in here. It kind of goes in really good there. See how it's just blended in there. I don't really have to pull too much of that dirt underneath it out, just because of the layer order. I can get it back in, and you just adjust off your fall off, your brush sizes and whatnot, and you can get some pretty cool natural effects. I just added a little patch there, kind of thing going on. But yeah, you got a pretty good there. And if I just want to darken it up, I know the dark's there. I just see how I'm pulling away from the dark, and just add more of that that light in there. But I mean, you got pure, well, pretty much pure grass, just a grass layer there, nothing underneath it to pop through. But I mean, this is an artistic process, and it's just going to drive you nuts over time. But anyway, that's, you know, the ballpark of it. Basic review of materials, textures, and landscape layer blending. We'll get into the other aspects of this, especially this grass type, in future video. I think it's going to be video 4. Our next jump is procedural grass, and we'll be loading up a procedural a demo map that, layout that I did. Simplistic. It's got a landscape. It's got materials already applied to it. It's got trees, and it's got the procedural grass in play. And that's where we're going to be at in the next video.